Welcome to the Transformative Language Arts Network, or TLAN, virtual salon. I am your host, Faye Lacson. I graduated with my Master of Arts in TLA and am the Membership and Outreach Co-Chair on the TLAN board. Thank you to Tracy Nichols, the TLAN coordinator who does the registration and announcements for this event, and my planning committee teammates, Amy Gross and Ashley Barnes. Ashley will be the event monitor today. And, feel free to put any questions in the chat. We'll be doing that. For those of you who are new to TLA practitioners are people who change the world with words. We use the written, spoken, and sung word for personal and community transformation. This can take many different forms, from writing stories to poetry to memoir and more. Today, you'll see a variety of pieces from TLA network members and artists. Everyone who reads is a member of the TLA network. I hope you'll consider joining our community or donating to the organization. A few housekeeping notes. As you may have seen in the pre-show screen, there is no tolerance for hate speech, harassment, or bullying. This event is being recorded and will be distributed publicly, so please keep your mics muted during the presentation part of the program. However, please engage with the artists and community through the chat box. As I said, we will be collecting questions throughout the program for the talk back with the artists afterward. For the best viewing experience, please set your view on the upper right-hand corner if you're on your computer to speaker. Set your view to speaker. Thank you so much, and please enjoy the TLAN virtual salon. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have you here. First up is the incomparable. I'm making this very exciting for all of you. One moment. Let me share my screen. Okay, hold on 1 second. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. We have captions turned on the bottom, and Ashley will be putting everybody's bios and website links in the chat. And so if you need any of that information, please look there. We're also going to be reading off cards. So you should be able to find everybody's name through all of those things. So one moment, let me get this share card. Oops. Okay. Apologies. All right. First up, we have John Swainston, our very own. If you were at the last virtual salon, you will have heard John. If you are on the TLAN board, you know John. And if you are in the TLAN organization, you have John to thank for helping us stay afloat this past year. He is our financial wizard and board treasurer. John L. Swainston started writing poetry to cope with feelings of isolation during COVID. He learned the craft by taking Zoom classes in poetry and writing at Turning Point, a support organization. He is a member of the Mystic Poet Society, the Writers' Place, and the Kansas City Writers Group. He has had 27 poems published with 3 awards. A poem in Veterans Voices received Editor's Choice Award. His first book of poems, Memory Box, was published spring 2022. John is a retired finance executive, college adjunct professor, and Army veteran. He lives in Gardner, Kansas, and is the TLAN board treasurer. Today, he will be reading several poems. One is called Basic, and the other is called Kindness Given, the latter from his book, Memory Box. Welcome, John. Please unmute.
Thank you all, and I'm ready if you're ready. The first poem I have, I wrote a few days ago after talking to a neighbor who was in the Navy. I'm an Army veteran, and this is called Basic. Who said it was easy? Running the Tropic Lightning Mile, that was 3 miles long, walking 30 miles in 8 hours with a 50-pound pack on your back, crawling under barbed wire, standing in a room full of tear gas, tears rolling down your eyes. Take cover in a field full of bugs and baby tarantulas. Qualify expert with an M14 and 45 caliber pistol. Who said it was easy? Not me. That's the first one. The next one comes from my book. This is the book on the cover, Memory Box, and it's kind of a memoir in the 4 stages of my life, from a young child to a teen to a little older and aging, which I do a lot of. I'm kind of fond of 4-letter words. So this poem is one of my very favorite 4-letter words, and that's kind, K-I-N-D. The title of this is Kindness Given. A little background. I'm a survivor of 3 different cancers. I've had all kinds of different treatments. One of my treatments, this event occurred. Walking down the circular path to the vaulted room, radiation treatment. Turning the corner, she looked up, smiled at me, just finished her treatment. 7 or 8, I think. Snuggled in her arm, she carried a teddy bear. Does that help? I asked. She smiled. Yes. The next day, walking the path, there he was, sitting on the handrail, her teddy bear. Oh no, look, she forgot her bear. No, she didn't. I looked at the tech, confused. No, she left them for you. My dad always told me that real men don't cry, but I did, and yes, it helped. Sadly, she passed 6 months later of brain cancer. Her treatment was not effective, mine was. That's basically the 2 that I chose to read, and I will pass it on to the next reader.
Thank you so much, John. I'll let us sit with that for a moment. Okay. What happened? Okay. Our next presenter is Emilee Baum, who I know from Goddard College a little while ago, let's say. Right. Emilee is a researcher and writer based in Atlanta, Georgia. A former chair of the TLA network, she was introduced to TLA at Goddard College, where she completed her MA in embodiment study. She is continuing her studies in expressive arts at the European Graduate School in Switzerland. Her book, The Agency of Bliss, was published in 2012. And today, Emilee will introduce her own piece. So thank you, Emilee. Please unmute.
Yes, I'm unmuted. Thank you, Amanda. Like I say, it's really nice to see you again. It's been a minute. And honestly, it's really been a minute since I've done any kind of public reading at all. I would say at least a couple of years. So I'm feeling a lot of gratitude. I'm really thankful that I'm joining such a group of generous listeners today to do this because I'm a little nervous. I have two pieces for you. They're both very short and neither of them have a title. But in the first one, there are two words in Sanskrit that you may or may not be familiar with. The first is lila, which means kind of like the cosmic play, the divine play that we're all a part of. And the second word is skandha, and that refers to a Buddhist philosophical concept. It means heaps, like the skandhas are the heaps of attributes that kind of hang together to make up a self. So those two words are in this first. It's kind of a poem, kind of a meditation. So again, I don't have a title for it yet. The felt sense of navigating the lila, non-specific awareness of the skandhas, the five heaps that are self. How the heaps of illusion slouch together in a collection of interdependent occurrences that is me. What does it feel like when I am what is most myself, itself an illusion? Where in this lived body do the tides of attraction and aversion arise, and how do these pulls and pushes define the shape of this self? What can I do? How can I be this body the most in this moment, the consciousness that passes from one now to the next, the shape of what it feels to be human? And this next piece is a little more lighthearted. My maternal grandparents passed away over this past year, and I've been helping my mom clean out the house and sort of take care of all the objects. And during the course of that, she shared with me stories about her growing up and about my grandmother growing up and what it was like for them. They are in Appalachia in Tennessee. And so I captured two of those stories in a piece of just very short fiction that I'm going to share with you. The chicken kept running, little gulps and spurts of blood pumping out of the gaping neck. Mother flapped about the yard after it, waving the axe and hollering. For the daughter, the moment was perfect stillness, a sharp ring of tinnitus high up in her right ear. It was the same frequency as the light that seeped out of the shocked round eye on the loose head of the bird. Waves of cicada rattles chugged through heavy leaves. Even flies were slow in this heat, thick, wet air coating everything. Not the chicken, though. It lurched and scratched through the yard, all irrational speed and motion, jerking at once toward and then away from Mother's outstretched hands. "Don't stand there, get it!" Mother yelped, the chicken lurching in her direction. The daughter registered the chicken's trajectory and tried not to see the sucking neck, the blood on the feathers. She looked for the legs, the scratching claws so deeply dangerous. At least there was no worry about pecking. The heat and humidity amplified the blood smell, mixing dirt with hay. The sun was a violent accomplice to this scene, and she hated it for being there. This was supposed to be her older sister's job, but she'd gone up the back field to help hoe. Linny was supposed to be making up the beds. She liked the inside work, measuring the flour for biscuits, even the hard, wet work of washing. She did not hoe, and she did not behead chickens, until just now. Linny scooped up the chicken fountain as she would any hen, a practiced move. She'd rather be anywhere than standing here with a bird tucked under her arm, burping blood on her apron. Tomorrow she's got plans. She's not her mother. Tomorrow she's going to hitch a ride on the farm pickup to Honeacre and buy a frame, a picture frame. After selling an entire box of clover mint, she won her prize, a little painting of a Saint Bernard. It needed a proper frame, so she could show it off. And yes, I still have the painting of the Saint Bernard with the frame. That's one of the things that I got from the house as we were cleaning it. So thank you. Thank you all for listening to these stories.
Thank you so much, Emilee. Those are lovely and contrasting, which I always love. And I always love to hear you read. And I love to hear people read their own work because you really show your voice. So thank you so much. Okay. All right. Next up, we have Sharon Pajka. Sharon is a professor of English at Gallaudet University. Should have asked how to pronounce that one. Oh, great. She is the author of Women Writers Buried in Virginia from 2021 and The Souls Close to Edgar Allan Poe, Graves of His Family, Friends, and Foes, 2023. On the weekends, find her in the cemetery, giving history tours or volunteering, as well as running the Virginia chapter of the Association for Gravestone Studies. Today, Sharon will read the poems Name Story and The Cemetery Kitten's Meow. Welcome, Sharon. Please unmute.
Thank you. I'm going to add, because Emilee mentioned that she hasn't read in a while, I think the last time that I publicly read my poetry was in 1990. I probably should be more nervous. This first poem is Name Story. I kept my last name and didn't add a hyphen, even though I would have to continue to spell. That's P as in Paul, A as in apple, no, not H, but A as in apple, J, K, and another A as in apple. Even though I would have to continue pronouncing, it's Pajka, not Pajka, not Paka, not Pajka. The name is as Polish as my unknown grandparents, who passed long before my birth, who remain as far from me as that small southwestern village bordering Germany, pronounced Spruslava. On a website, my father researches his parents' obituaries. Their names are not listed, as if they never existed, as if our last 10 members stemmed from a history unpronounced. My father was 10, visiting his pop in Whitehaven Sanitarium, distanced through a screen porch, distanced by a disease hard enough to knock down a Pennsylvania coal miner, abbreviated to TB. Am I like her? Questioning dad about his mother, memories of Poland has greener grass, lying about her age, being robbed of family photos and birth certificates, pronounced babciu in her Slavic tongue. On a website, I researched the origin of my name, my last connection to a dying clarity, where memories lie deep within the mind of Alzheimer's. An offering of a chance, learning PAJ is the root of the name, the land of spiders, and KA, the child of, both an articulation of my existence. I like to envision my ancestors traveling to America, freeing themselves from arachnids, searching for this American dream while pronouncing our name, Pajka, Pajka, Pajka. I have a bit of an introduction for the next poem. On October 3rd, 2023, I went to Shockoe Hill Cemetery to run through my Edgar Allan Poe focus tour. And I swear I was minding my own business when I saw movement in a hole under the grave of Charles Ellis, a business partner to Poe's foster father. It turned out to be a little black kitten. The next day, the rescue team arrived, immediately caught the mama cat, and the little black kitten had 2 siblings. And later we learned that there were 4 in total. Unable to reach the kitten by putting arms into a hole with a 2,000-pound, possibly unstable tomb, considering that gaping hole, there was debate about whether it was more ethical to release the mama cat so that she could feed her babies, because they were very tiny, or if saving one was enough. Now, all the cats were saved, thanks to long days and a dedicated friend who wouldn't give up. So this poem, The Cemetery Kitten's Meow, is dedicated to that friend, Marilyn. The Cemetery Kitten's Meow, a poem with personification and taking the personified out to coffee. I met the cemetery kitten at Corner Stop Cafe for coffee. Ellis was seated at a small table with a vanilla steamer. Are the lattes good? Not knowing what to say. Meow. I ordered a mocha and joined him at the table. The silence nearly broke me. How's your mom and siblings? Adjusting to the new place? Meow. It was scary. I'm sorry about that. Meow. Something about that day, the rescue, I could not get out of my mind. The silence consumed me. What was a home to you was not a home to me. Meow. I didn't know that. I'm sorry. Meow. We sat in silence, which nearly broke me. I understand you'll all be adopted. Meow. Yes, the families are far apart. Meow. Something about being removed from his tombstone whole home. Of my intervention, Ellis did not remain silent.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That was lovely to hear. I love both of those pieces. I will be sharing my screen one moment. Alrighty. Next up, we have Autumn Konopka. Autumn is an award-winning writer, a runner, and a trauma-informed teaching artist. A former poet laureate of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania in 2016, Autumn's poetry chapbook, A Chain of Paper Dolls, was published in 2014, and her debut novel, Pheidippides Didn't Die, was released in 2023. Sorry for my mouth marbles. Today, Autumn will be reading from the first chapter of her novel, Pheidippides Didn't Die, a love story about two people struggling with difficult traumas who find hope and healing as they train for a marathon together. Welcome, Autumn. Please unmute.
Hi, thank you. I am a new member, and I'm just really grateful to be able to join this group. I'm gonna just give a mini introduction because I'm gonna read the second half of the first chapter. The first chapter it's short, but it's in two halves. And in the first half, we meet the main character as she is walking onto a bridge wearing weights on her ankles and wrists, and she is actually planning to jump off. She makes that clear. But then she is interrupted by this really weird guy, and they end up leaving the bridge together. So this picks up after they've left the bridge. When we get to 6th Street, I flop unceremoniously onto the first bench I find. Fuck, my legs are tired. I unstrap the weights on my wrists and let them fall with a thud. Then I bend to remove the weights from my ankles. Not creepy stranger sits beside me and picks up a wrist weight from the bench between us. 5 pounds on each wrist? Damn, you're a badass. And you're really not training for anything? Iditarod? He chuckles. I smile back but don't answer. This guy is clearly not comfortable with silence. My brother, the runner, he's the real athlete in my family, but I'm not sure I ever caught him strapping weights to himself, at least not that I know of. I reach for the weight in his hand. He doesn't immediately release it, and for a second, my fingers, clasping at one of the heavy padded straps, graze his. I look at the weight, at my fingers, at his hand. When I look up, he's looking at my face, staring into my eyes, inviting me to tell him my secret. His fingers are warm, and his face is so open, I almost want to tell him. But then it wouldn't be a secret anymore. I tug the weight out of his hand and put it in the slim backpack I've been carrying. I grab all the others and put those in as well. Then I drop the backpack between my feet and rest my head in my hands. I don't want to walk anymore. I wasn't planning on carrying anything home, let alone this extra 20 pounds, but I can't just sit here in this deserted part of town with a stranger, regardless of how not creepy he is. I'm Mac, by the way. Oh, hi, Mac. I respond as if we didn't just walk almost a mile together across a bridge in the thickening night. How did I not ask his name earlier? This is just like me, so caught in my head, I don't think about the normal things that normal people do, like fucking introduce themselves. And you are? See, there it is again. When someone introduces themselves, you introduce yourself back. Why am I so awkward? Before I can say anything, not creepy stranger, Mac, slides back a few inches on the bench, holding his hands up, creating space. Wait, you don't need to tell me. You don't know me. This whole night has been so weird. I understand why you wouldn't tell me your name. Sitting here on the bench, Mac is decidedly not creepy. He has gray-blue eyes and small early wrinkles in all the places where wrinkles start in your 30s. Eye corners, mouth corners, that space between your eyebrows. His hands are clean but a little rough. He doesn't manicure, but I'm also pretty sure he doesn't work outside for a living. I should have known by the buttoned shirt, which I'm just noticing now is yellow. I think it's hard to tell under the hazy orange streetlights. He has the sleeves rolled up to just below his elbows, and I notice his right arm's covered to the wrist with tattoos. I realize I'm staring a little, sizing him up, so I lean toward the street and fix my eyes on the passing cars. I need a cab, I say, still deciding whether or not I want to tell him my name. I can order you a lift. I guess I'm showing my age, I chuckle, suddenly self-conscious. It was much easier when this man was the not creepy stranger acting too familiar on the bridge. Now he's Mac, with the hands and the eyes and the tattoo sleeve, not creepy Mac, handsome, polite Mac, too good to be interested in crazy me, Mac. I shouldn't care what he thinks of me, but I do, Mac. I'm Libby. Hi, Libby. He extends his hand so we can shake as if we've just been introduced to the business meeting or networking event. I shake, the second time in 5 minutes I've touched his hand, and I like the way it feels. Because I like the feel of his hand and because I think I've held on a little too long, I drop it and reach into my pocket for my phone. I can order my own car, I say firmly, remembering I'm a woman, alone, at night, in the city, a pretty empty part of the city, actually, remembering this man is a stranger who followed me onto a bridge and then off again. Mac puts his hand on my phone. Before you do that, and you absolutely should, but before you do, and this is probably a ridiculous question to ask, but it's been a pretty ridiculous hour. Do you want to get a drink or coffee or something to eat? I don't think I ate dinner tonight. I worked late and then I was walking home and I saw you and then all this. And the thing is, I'm really kind of hungry and I don't know. I thought you might want something too. Even if you're not hungry, it's nice to not eat alone. It's fine to eat alone sometimes. It's not like I can't eat alone. Okay, I interrupt abruptly, then stop. What am I doing? What's even happening right now? Is he asking me out? Does he need someone to buy him dinner? Is this some new panhandling tactic? The confusion is dizzying, and I know I should probably go home. Then again, my calves are tight, my mouth is dry, and this guy has such an artless smile. Not to mention those hands. I'm not really hungry, but I could drink something. Oh, good. He takes his hand off my phone and gently pushes it toward me. So you call a car and I'll call a separate car and we can meet somewhere. That way, you don't have to worry about, I don't know, anything. You also don't have to think that I'm trying to steal a ride from you. This may be one of the strangest offers I've ever heard, but it's oddly comforting. It also challenges my panhandling theory. I decide to take him up on it just in case all my instincts are wrong and he actually is some sort of sociopath. I mean, so far, I'm not picking up any macho temper vibes, but this could still be a trap. What if I say, no, we'll share a car, and he thinks I'm easy prey? that could be serendipitous. I mean, the night would end as I intended, but no, I don't want to go out like that. So separate cars it is. Mac takes out his phone. Great, where are we going? It's been a while since I went out in this neighborhood, but I certainly don't want to go any place near my apartment. We need somewhere relatively crowded and not out of the way, since the possibility of him being a psycho killer is still on the table. That said, on the off chance he's not 100% awful, and good God, as I notice again the ink on his sinewy forearm, I really hope he's not. I want to go somewhere we can actually talk. National Mechanics? It's not that late. They're probably still serving food, right? If not, I guess I'll have to drink my dinner. He smiles and shrugs, and I'm pretty sure I like Mac more than I've liked anything in a really long time. I'm also pretty sure I'm not jumping off a bridge tonight after all.
That line, that ending line is just super awesome. And like I just wrote this, that inner monologue is feeling just way so real. So, that was great. Thank you so much. And everyone go buy her book. Awesome. Yes, people want to buy the book. They want to know the story. So, and you're doing a tour right now, right? Like you're kind of doing your readings right now. Is that right, Autumn?
Yeah, I'm sort of getting out and around and doing readings. Wherever I can, trying to. So this is what it looks like.
Oh,
And
yay.
it's everywhere that you buy books. I mean, it's not in like Barnes and Noble stores, but like you can get it on that site and you can get it on Amazon and some local businesses and stuff like that. But yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, we'll be sure to share links in follow-up emails for sure. Thank you. All right. Up next, we have Tanya Lewis. Tanya loves words and playing with language. She believes authenticity and imagination are superpowers. As a writer, editor, and researcher, her professional work has won multiple awards, including 2 Folio Awards for editorial excellence. Her creative work includes poetry and moth-style true stories. She also has studied and performed improv in New York City at Improvolution and Magnet Theater and at Bats Improv in San Francisco. Recently, she has been immersed in exploring ways in which poetry and reflections on word meaning can support trauma recovery. She is committed to using creativity to inspire, empower, and uplift. Welcome, Tanya. Please unmute.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate you. Hi, everyone. I am Tanya. I'm going to read a piece for you today that is from a collection of pieces called Words in 3D. Last year, I guess it was last year, yeah, sometime last year, I suddenly became aware of the word forgiveness in 3 dimensions, as if it was a path that I could climb in and walk through. And since then, the practice is stuck, or the ability is stuck with me, and I've been writing about different words from this perspective. You can find out more about the history of that and how I came to it through my Substack, if you like, which I think is linked in the chat. So this is called Life 91523. Life is a short word. Entry into the longitudinal axis is a bit steep. The slide down the capital L is, well, vertical. And the landing spot is just a small corner with a relatively short ledge, easy to roll off or tumble from the easternmost edge. I enter at roughly 35 degrees north, 90 degrees west, and like a wide-eyed ringtail lemur, I hang on until I'm comfortable enough to sit up, balance, and see the lowercase I. I like the isolation of the I. It feels like an improvement. Spacious and somewhat mysterious with the dot there above. Its own planet, suspended, self-contained, free. From the I navigate the lows and highs of the lowercase f, assisted by the nice toe-hold bar in the middle. It's fun to swing from the F's upper curve like a piece of fruit and slide down its stem. The view atop the F is expansive and unbound. I try to remember not to fret, fuss, and slip from the top slope into forgetfulness. Even when I do forget and fall, the middle bar somehow catches me, providing a perch to collect myself and the foothold I need to ease into the ease of the E. And the I of the E, I feel seen, safe within, free to experience and express into the expanse of the white space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I was about to write in there in the chat, the ease into the ease of the E feels very luscious. And I want to see this videoed with like the letters in the background so that we can, you know, take that journey. But we do anyway with the words. So thank you so much, Tanya. I want to check, is Oyah here? Because I'm not sure. If Oyah is here, please unmute and let me know. No? Okay. No worries. We will just keep moving forward.
She is here, Amanda.
Oh, she is.
She is,
Okay,
yes,
great.
she's here as Mama Earth. There she
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. Yay. Thank you, Oyah. Awesome. And thank you so much, Amy. That's I kind of thought that was you, Oyah, but I wasn't sure. So I just wanted to call you out loud. Okay, let me go ahead and introduce you, and then we get to hear you read. One moment. All right, next up, Oyah, or Mama Earth. Oyah is a transformative language artist, soothsayer, and inspirational speaker whose words and rhythmic voice provide an easy road to travel through the difficult stories she tells. Oyah's poem, We, He, was in consideration for the 2008 inauguration of President Barack Obama. Today, Oyah will be reading We Do Language, a tribute to Toni Morrison and the meaning of life. Welcome, Oyah, and please unmute.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. It was a conglomeration of events that just all began at one time, but I made it. We die, that may be the meaning of life, but we do language. That may be the measure of our lives. Toni Morrison. We die. Many times and in many ways, we must die to something if we are ever to experience this life as a rich, diverse harvest. For death is a certain and necessary function of life, as is love, pain, loneliness, doubt, wonder, joy, and orgasm. All of it is life, and it is also death. That may be the meaning of life. To die. To travel in the realms of the mystery, magic, and sacred madness, where all of the gods and goddesses reside, some basking, some gambling, some binding, or simply being. That I don't know for sure. It is far beyond my gifts to say the exact orientation of any being, particularly the divine ones. What I do know is that when I am truly in that space of death, when letting go is complete, that is the time I can feel my calling. I know when the divine is near. I can feel them in all their wise, dark forms, lit from within by the light. I can see them when I look here, now, in your eyes. But we do language. We stare deep and long, beaming our love or our hatred at the intended targets. We clench our fists in celebration, affirmation, but also in rage. We hold our hand out and speak volumes, palm over, open at the waist, language. That is language. Palm open, fingers spread, arms outstretched. That is language. We can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, middle finger up, head down, legs open, arms out. Language. Legs crossed, tears falling. Language. When we listen to a lover, though their words break our hearts and we stay because we are willing to own our part. When we compliment a stranger because we sense their lack and their need. Language. When we mean the things we say and then do the things we said. When we drop the mask and tell the story of, yes, our glory, but more our shame. When we write it down on paper, butt naked in the rain, not because we're sexy, but because we're baptizing our pain, we do language. That may be the measure of our lives. To measure is to assess the extent, quality, value, effect of. For example, it is hard to measure teaching ability, but you can see it in the student. Also, to choose carefully, select with care, consider, think carefully about. Let us think carefully about this. Toni Morrison could have used her massive gifts and mastery of language to write volumes on matters of standard beauty, religion, philosophy, science, or high society, especially knowing what she knew about the meaning and measure of life. But she didn't. She reached down into the deep, into the blackest night, the darkest mysteries, magic, and madness of Black folk in America. She grabbed the barbaric nature of chattel slavery by its hideous neck and wrung it until the lies died right before our eyes. She conjured us a resurrection of beauty, love, courage, and humanity, then poured it forth like libations for our dead children's souls. May the meaning and measure of my work have a quality selected with care, a value, and effect that is helpful. May my life and my language matter to someone, somewhere, who needs a reason to believe. Thank you, Toni Morrison, for daring to go where no one dared before, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Oyah. And please read all of the love that is pouring in for you on the chat. That was awesome. Thank you. And I'm so glad that you were able to make it.
Thank you. Me too.
Yay.
Let's do it again.
All righty. And to bring us home, we have Chad Gurley up next and last. A poet and artist, Chad A. Gurley graduated from Vanderbilt Divinity School and Harding University, Living Life's Questions. Chad began writing and blogging while living in NYC right before 9/11. After witnessing that tragedy and the trauma of violent loss, Chad began writing poetry and short stories to promote peace, hope, and understanding. Chad's poems have been published in Emerge magazine, The Epistle, The Columbia Observer, and a book of LGBT Christians poetry, Sanctified. The Stoning of Andrew, his fiction short story, was a nominee for Story South's 2006 Millions Writers Award. Welcome, Chad. Please unmute.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. I am honored and grateful. Like others, I haven't shared poetry out loud in a very long time, so I'm especially grateful to the Transformative Language Arts Network for this experience. Today, I want to share a little poetic bio, a title poem from my chat book from 2004, 20 years ago, and then two new short poems. So I hope you enjoy them. First, a little about me. Bios are incredibly difficult to write if you've written one. So I wrote two, the one you just heard, and then another that was a little bit more of a poetic bio that adds a little bit more color and texture to the summation of this generic summation of my life so far. So this is my bio. Chad Gurley. Just one more little life living alongside the other 8 billion on Earth at this moment in time. Though a poet and an artist, I am foremost an advocate for love. For love is the one thing that buoys my life above all its currents of bad. Love sheltered me through the catastrophic storms of 9/11 and NYC, the suicides of my best friend and my mother, the death of my father after his rapid decline into dementia. Love lifted me as I tread through the rejections of those I love because I am queerly gay and the unacceptance by those I love because I am a bit of a Jesus child. Love embraced me closer through my bouts of depression, alcoholism, self-destruction, and self-sabotage. While these 50 years of life have seemed at times a maelstrom spinning me down, down, down into oblivion, no matter what, when all has seemed lost, whenever I've been so close to drowning and being pulled under, love has kept me alive. Love keeps my hope alive. And it is through this hope that I can see beyond all that's wrong to the continuously cascading of good. And that's the waterfall I want to show you. On 9/11 of 2001, I was working at Columbia University, and as you heard, the devastation of that day, it birthed a new kind of spiritual awakening within me and made me absolutely zealous for peace. And ever since that day, I began writing poetry that advocated for love and peace in opposition to the vengeful spirit that at that time held most of the US. Bruce Gehrig was a librarian at Columbia at the time, and he came up to me and said, I want to publish or print rather a chat book of some of your poems. And of course I was like, okay, yes. And so here it is. This is from 2004. It's called Screaming Dove. I think I sold 2 copies, but I was going through boxes the other day and I found it and I was like, oh, these poor little babies, you know, poems can become like little babies that you miss. And I just wanted to read the title poem because I think there's just so much going on in the world today. Back when I was marching in the streets for peace and handing out flyers that declared no more violence in Herald Square, I was begging people that during that time to wake up to our common humanity. But the US began wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I just realized that so many people were just still sleeping. And so this is from Screaming Dove. It's called Waking You. I startle you, scare you, shake you to your core. I am the loud alarm throwing open your eyes, jolting your heart into a frantic beat, pinching at your every bed sore. I am roaring and shocking, to your every nerve electrifying. I am blaring me. It's time to wake up. The time for sleep is done. You have slumbered enough. You don't want to miss the sun. I've tried to be kind, tried to be easy, tried to be quiet. I thought that in loving you, I shouldn't jar you from sleep in a commotion that seemed so piercingly defiant. So I was smooth and gentle, but rousing you wasn't that simple. I delicately murmured, please open your eyes. It's time to wake up. Tranquilly you may rise. You have slumbered enough. But you turned over, you drooled, you began to snore. You wiped away the water I trickled, pushed away my hand that nudged you a little, detested me for refusing to let you sleep a little more. Coma held you captive into lethargy you had adapted. I could only swell. It's time to wake up. The time for sleep is done. You have slumbered enough. There is peace to be won. So excuse my abrasive yell, my obtrusive rattle, my offensive tone, and finally truly awaken to this, my new, tenacious, tough love, thundering and roaring through your delicate, feeble comfort zone. Your unconsciousness shall quake, as with my blatant love you awake. I am blaring me. I am blaring love. Open your eyes to see a screaming dove. And in closing, I want to leave you with a few newer poems that invite you to love your work and share it, because the world needs to hear your voice. The first one's called Beyond All the Ways. Beyond all the ways you are dissected, the labels, the identifiers, the accolades, the rumors, the adjectives, the adverbs, the slangs, and the slurs, you are a whole human being with a consciousness, an essence, a soul that is your own alone. And thus you are extremely valuable and deserving of love just for being you. Believe this, it is true. And the last one is called It Is Time. It is time to untangle your tongue and let the muzzle drop with a thud. Time to speak your truth, tell the narrative, one both as unique as it is universal. It's time to bear witness to you, all of you, to your own singular experience of this, the imagining, the awareness, the breathing, this thing we called life, the being we cherish. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Chad. And thank you, everybody. Please feel free to unmute and give applause to our wonderful readers. Yay! Great job, everybody. I am so excited for all of your work. That was awesome. All the things. Applauses in all the ways. Yay! get the reaction button going. That was fantastic. We are going to take a short 5-minute break so that you can stretch your legs and think of other questions, think of some questions. And then we will be back probably right at 6 to have our talk back with the artists. So please get your questions in the chat, or yeah, and can't wait. All right, talk to you in a few. Yes, artists, please feel free to come on camera, unmute your mics. We're going in gallery mode now, if you like. Let's make sure everybody's here. And if you have a question, please either put it in the chat or you can raise your hand and I'm happy to call on you. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay. Let's see if we're all back, the artists. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. Great. All right. Charlotte, I see you have raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for this wonderful opportunity for us to hear these writers. It's been very impressive. I have a question for Tanya. I've been fortunate enough to have heard her read many times, and most recently I've heard more of the word poems over the last year or so. And I want to know, how did this come into being? How did she take a word? What was the first time this happened to her? What was on her mind when she said, what if I do this or that? And I want to know if it's how it may have changed from the inception to where she is now. I really love this last piece I heard of hers.
I'll just unmute. Thank you, Charlotte. Charlotte, thank you so much for the question. Wonderful to see you. Thanks for coming. It happened on a day I was writing in a regular writers group, and I started this practice of pulling words out of other people's poems, just words that stood out to me for whatever reason, and then writing about what those words meant to me as a child, as a teenager, and then on the day that I was writing. This is in my Substack if you guys are interested. It's Tanya Lewis at Substack. And one day I pulled out, I've done this practice a lot, and it's tremendously helpful to me in terms of seeing how my thought process and patterns of behavior and all kinds of things in a feeling of integration came out of it. And one day I pulled out, I don't know, a handful of words, and one of the words was forgiveness. It was forgiveness and Manhattan, and I can't remember the other ones, maybe 6 words. And all of a sudden, just spontaneously, the word forgiveness presented itself in my mind as a structure, like a path, a literal 3 dimensions. And I was like, oh, wow. And so I just walked into it mentally, in my imagination. And so that's what I wrote about on that day. And since then, other words, certain life is one of them, have presented themselves to me in that way. And it's super fun. It's a super fun exercise. So thank you for asking. And it has, it's evolved. They're not all sometimes I would do like the letters of the word itself would correspond with what the experience was, but like for instance, the F and falling from the F and freedom, like the F words, like the alliteration is fun to play with, but they don't all follow that pattern. Some do, some don't. So thanks so much for asking. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks very much for that.
Thank you so much, Tanya and Charlotte. Karen has asked a question in the chat, and it kind of goes along with a question that I'm curious about. As TLAers, we borrow from our personal transformations and turn them into writing to share or for ourselves. And Karen, the way she put it is, I'm interested in hearing any of the writers talk about the connection between writing, survival, and thriving. So would anyone like to take that on? Oyah, thank you.
Hi, that's a great question, Karen. I'm glad you asked it. The writing, when it came to me that I am a writer, it was almost unbelievable, and I had a difficulty receiving it as something I could call myself. But from all the reading that I've done, reading as narcotic, reading as therapy, reading for fun, all the different reasons readers read, well, I started to feel like I had something to say. And what I wanted to say was about the difficult things that life had brought to me. I felt empowered by the writing of it and saying it, that yes, this terrible thing happened, but I can say it out loud. I can say it, I can write it, and I can tell stories about it, just in case it's someone else that is drowning in their sorrow about the same experience. So sort of kind of liberating for me. Thank you.
That's awesome, Oyah. I see the nods. So one of you who is nodding, please feel free to take the mic. Sharon, please.
I don't know how to follow that. That's yes. I jotted down release and restoration when I think about TLA, and the poems that I read today were pretty much like lived experience. With the name story, it's just something that's been with me, and I've tinkered with this idea of what is my identity as this child from grandparents who came from Poland, and having a Southern mama and a Northern dad who is from Appalachia, like the western part of Pennsylvania. What does any of that mean? And then also just, I think, a very white immigration process is just to get rid of so much of our culture. I was lucky that I got to go to my dad's home for food, or I would have missed out on everything Polish. Except, he used language when I was little, and I thought he was making up words, and it happened to be Polish. But the poem about Ellis the kitten, that it really bothered me. And I mean, he's an adorable little kitten. And if you look at Facebook, I have the video of like the first time I saw him, and he's just like so punky. He kind of comes out and he's so tiny. He's like, "What's going on?" Nothing. And then he goes back under the hole. And then I was like, now I'm responsible. But what if I was responsible and I did something completely wrong? And what if that was a good home for a wild cat? I don't, there's so many ethical issues. So I think for me, writing the poems are a way to grapple with like how I feel, and also to see others' point of view, even if it's from a little, stray kitten.
That's awesome. You definitely feel the empathy in your work and in what you were just saying, and the explorations of identity. Would anyone else like to share on this? Autumn, please.
I'll say, so I mean, that question in particular, like really struck me, because the first that bit that I read, I mean, backing up, like I've written poetry for my whole life. I never thought I was going to ever write a novel. And I was actually super depressed and suicidal and in my closet, like hiding. That was my safe place. And I was curled up in a ball crying. And I had this vision of like a woman walking onto a bridge, and this was her plan, and this was what she was going to do. And I knew that I could save her. I didn't know how to save myself at the time, but I knew I could save her. And I saw this arc of a story in a way that I had never seen fiction before in my life. And I just kind of knew that I had to start writing it. And I started writing it at first, not really thinking it was going to be anything. And it was sort of in the middle of the pandemic, and I wasn't doing much else. And so that was how I kind of survived for a while personally. And then making that work was about helping this character, this person, and also doing that in a way that she could thrive, right? Like that you could tell a story that was about someone who had a really just was really struggling with some really deep trauma, but like it wasn't just like a prop, like a lot of times you see that in movies, it's like this prop, or it's this thing that then, or somebody comes in and saves them, and it's this whole like hero thing that is just like, but this person really to sort of save herself in a way while also kind of like, you know, finding love, etc. And just sort of, to me, that, and then the process of doing that, it was like a fake it till you make it kind of process, right? Like I'm doing that, and as she's getting better and I'm having to write out her coping skills, I'm like, well, I guess I got to do that too, you know. And I think I had always written the hard stuff. I'd always thought about these kind of things, like, you know, I'd always written for that sense of like transformation, but this particular project was one of those things where I was like, this literally, quite literally saved my life. And I knew, in a way that I had also not known with a lot of other things, that I thought this is the kind of thing that I want to go out into the world, because I think that maybe there are people like that, you know, like Oyah said, that will need to hear this. They will need to find and see themselves in a thing. They will need to see their own struggle reflected and be able to find hope in that. And that's, I think, also the thriving, right? Like that hope that someone else will see our pain and it transforms us to write it, but hopefully that it also can transform them to read it. So thank you for that. I love that question.
That's awesome, Autumn. I love how you wanted to save her, you know, like how that was the first thing. And sometimes that's just so much easier, like to think of first, you know. But I love that she sprung forth, kind of formed, you know, in a way that made you want to get her out in the world. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. John, since we're speaking of surviving and thriving, the pieces that you read today, especially kindness, but also the first piece with basic, they're very relational. They're like about your interactions in the world and with like very specific people. Can you talk a little bit about that and how the like everyday kind of inspires you?
Yeah, I guess I can. I'm kind of, as I said, I'm a survivor of 3 cancers, and being COVID confined me, and I live alone, and I don't want to release all my medical history, but while I'm dealing with those 3 cancers, I also had a quadruple bypass and a stroke at different times. So I had 3, 4, 5 things going on over a period of time. And with that, I got diagnosed with acute depression. And I'll let you know there's nothing cute about depression. It's a difficult thing to deal with. And some of my poetry and my book is about those situations and surviving that. And I would be the last person in the world to be called a poet. I failed. I was on the dean's list in my first year of college. And, you know, you get on the dean's list, you're kind of excited because that's a big deal, right? Well, mine was a Dear John letter. And it said, Dear John, don't come back. We don't want you here because you can't pass the English exam. So there's an entrance exams. I passed everything but English, and they kicked me out. And I don't think poetry was the last thing in my whole life that I thought I would ever do, but it's what saved my life and what Autumn talked about. And I write about me because that's what I know. It's what I've experienced, and I'm a bit of a maverick. I've been to 42 different countries. I've taken a 6-month trip around the world. I've lived on the East Coast, the West Coast, here in Kansas. I lived in Hawaii. Spent a year in Australia. Served in the Army 14 years. 3 of it active, 11 of it in the reserves. Spent some time in vacationing in Vietnam. That was a lot of fun, by the way, taking a nice vacation with a duffel bag. So that's what I write about. That's what I know. That's what's in me, in my soul. In fact, I was going to read I was going to read a poem that I just wrote about the soul mechanic. And that's something that just arrived at me while I was watching a YouTube thing about a female doing a man's job, being a mechanic, and how all the men were laughing at her, and she was an excellent mechanic. And I was sitting there saying, well, you know, I bet she feels good down deep that that's something that she took a challenge on and did well. And so my head said, soul mechanic. So I wrote a poem about it. Maybe if I'm invited back, I'll read that one.
Great. I hope you will.
I don't know if any of that makes sense, but that's what I say.
Of course. Of course. Thank you so much. Speaking of like kind of juxtapositions, you were talking about the soul mechanic, and Emilee, you're up.
Okay.
No, because the work you shared today come from or like evoke like very different kinds of place and unraveling. I think, you know, there's a lot of unraveling going on as an exploration of like your identity or the identity of the speaker. Can you speak a little bit about that and how that, if it's intentional, how you might figure it into your work?
Sure. I mean, they are two very different pieces, right? You know, so the first one, sort of a poem meditation. I feel like writing a lot of times is listening for me. And I think as transformative language artists, that happens a lot, right? Writing becomes this way to listen to parts of yourself or things that are happening in and around you that like your what is it? Sort of your everyday brain is so full of other stuff that it doesn't get. So I was trying to, in that first piece, I was trying to really like listen to the nonverbal parts of what it felt like to be me or to be a self, and say some words about it. Because they're not really words that you can put on those sensations, right? They're feelings, but the whole sense of feeling of being, it's a listening. So in that case, that writing was more like listening and trying to capture that listening. And I guess that's true of the other piece too. I was listening to my mom and those experiences about her and my grandmother, and it was trying to capture them, even though I couldn't get them down exactly, the feeling and the flavor and the experience of what it felt like to be their bodies in that moment. You know, trying to listen to what that sounded like. You know, thinking about this idea of TLA work as both surviving and thriving. I feel like, you know, surviving, it comes from a very you're grasping for it and reaching for it and pulling for it and finding it, something to hold on to. And then the thriving part is about, for me, continuing that energy and keeping it fresh and keeping in touch with that listening. I know that I'm not thriving if I stop writing. Like if I stop writing and it's been like a few days or a week, or I'm like, wow, man, something's going on. Like I need to look at some of those self-care techniques you mentioned. Like I gotta do some of that for myself. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like that idea of listening and having that appear through language, through the words, and then reading it back to yourself and suddenly hearing parts that you didn't know were coming out of you, you know. Yeah, that's sort of how those pieces are similar, even though they were very different. Yeah.
I love that. And I think, and then
Like, I hope that makes sense.
it
Yeah.
absolutely makes sense. And I mean, it made more sense than my question, probably. So, yeah, I would definitely resonated with the people that I can see on the screen. Chad, your work definitely speaks about surviving and thriving. I was very moved by the appeal to love and the appeal to and that was your bio, but it still works as a creative piece. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with writing as surviving, thriving?
Yeah, is my okay. You know what's funny is that I read The Color Purple by Alice Walker in high school, and ever since then I started writing letters to God. And that was a really therapeutic thing for me in kind of, and there's a lot of different traditions of kind of like letting things go and giving them up to your higher power. And that's really kind of where that came from for me. And then, and so I'd always written long form, but when September 11th happened, I thought, to be honest, in my 20s, I was self-righteous. I was committed to peace. I could not understand why anyone would think differently than me. And so a lot of my writing at that time was very much a preacher. I had this preacher poet mentality and and writing a lot of protest poems. But the way in which I've allowed it to help me, let my writing and poetry help me, is by, instead of pushing a message onto people, which I'm really struggling with because I did go to Vanderbilt Divinity School, so I do kind of have that preacher kind of thing behind me. I've decided, you know what? I don't want to give people advice. I just really want to witness life and just be a witness of what is here. And so I'm finding that my writing, my poetry now is it's more therapeutic for me now because I am just writing about those moments in life and those feelings and things that we experience. And I think Emilee said it really well. It's like trying to capture those succinctly and in a little seed that you can give someone else and say, here's an expression of my life. This is what I was feeling. Do you hear this? Do you understand this? And then when someone relates to it and has that kind of commonality, you can tell that the light bulbs go off and like it brings something to them. And that's a bonus. So yeah, I think that my writing has evolved, and of course the survival and thriving has evolved as well. So that's, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chad. I wanted to offer in our last few minutes, do any of the artists have any questions for each other? There was a lot of kindness I felt in the work that you all shared today, and that just makes my heart feel warm. There is a lot of warmth and love for your people, your speakers, and all of that. And so, yeah, I don't have a specific question around that. I just wanted to share that. Yeah. So yeah, does anyone else have any other questions before we head off into our respective Zoom holes?
Maybe not so much a question as just a thank you. Like, this has been really amazing and very supportive. Like I say, it's been a long time since I've done this, so a lot of gratitude for being here with you all today.
I had a thought
yeah.
I had a
Go
thought
ahead.
that in terms of surviving and thriving, I think my heart feels the same, Amanda, and I think it's because we're connected We all connected with one another on levels today. And that to me is thriving. And we can connect. Thank you. Thank you all for the experience and the opportunity. I'm wonderful to be here.
Yeah, and I would just say, write. If you are a novice, if you're a seasoned writer, just write. And I think it's just so important. And I'll see, I'm gonna start preaching. I think it's just so important for people to have their voices and their witness of their life to be out there and among people, because I think we have gotten so siloed and isolated that we're not connecting with each other, and we just don't realize how universal the human experience is, even though we are our own unique person with our own struggles and things. But there is a universal connection that our writing, your writing, if you're not even reading, whoever you are, can speak to other people. So do it, write. Join Transformative Language Arts Network and get involved, and so.
Awesome. You're doing my job. Ashley, go drop that in the chat. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Sharon, please.
I want to add too, like, just kind of almost to emphasize the other people who have spoken about TLA. I haven't written poetry since the 1990s. I've written very academic, and I've started writing more creative, but language does matter. And even as a professor, and before that as a K through 12 teacher, I always said that, but then academia beats you up and you don't want to do it. And even now, like, I'm a major minor coordinator for the English major, and all I read about is how the humanities are shrinking, or how the numbers are going up because people are finding, a connection to language. And this TLA has just really, like, yes, that's just how I just feel. Yes, I finally found the place that I needed to find. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing that. John, were you going to say something? No. Saluting.
I'd like to say thank
Oh,
you
yeah.
as well for Transformative Language Arts. I have been searching, people say, well, what do you do? Who are you? And it wasn't until when I was at Goddard, I saw a conference brochure, and it said Transformative Language Arts. And it just went through my whole body. And I said, that's it. That's it. So I just want to thank you so much, Karen, and all of those who worked to create this at Goddard and then bring it out into the world. It means a lot to me. It really does. Thank you.
Thank you, Oyah. I also have felt a home here and with all of you. I love that this is a space that you can feel comfortable sharing in, even if you haven't in a while, which is awesome. And you can play with new forms if you haven't. That's a thing that I've enjoyed or loved about Transformative Language Arts, is that it's just very welcoming as a network and as a discipline, so to speak. Thank you, everybody, for attending the event, and the artists for sharing the work that they did today. Thank you, Ashley, for doing the event monitoring, and Tracy for setting all this all up, and Amy for helping to plan. And I invite you all, audience members, to visit tlanetwork.org, become a member if you see yourselves in the work that was shared today, and keep an eye out for the next virtual salon, because we hope to do this again. Thank you, everybody.